However, Your Worship, I would even be thinking about supporting anything to limit public input, were it not for the fact that we live in a very complex world, Your Worship. In a world in which some of the people, and I can think of one person in particular, who regularly makes appearances at the public input table after having posted on social media what can only be described as vicious, bullying, intimidating attacks on city staff. And so I have in front of me right now a package of supposedly editorial cartoons that, on the one hand, suggest that Mr. Tolstom is demented, that Mr. Tolstom has no character, that Mr. that Mr. Tolstom is, I've got another one here as well, on top of dementia and many other things, that he's a fossil, that he needs to be retired, that his age becomes a common question about this. The same person, Your Worship, posted on social media just 2 weeks ago, Your Worship, a suggestion that our city clerk, Ms. Graham, was being dishonest and lying to people at the desk. They suggest as well that Mr. Timmins, our Director of Finance, through a mistake of another person, was profiting personally from that mistake. And at the end of the day, Your Worship, these are horrendous slanders that constitute, to my mind, intimidation and bullying of our staff and should be not tolerated. And I think in this chamber, when the same person who makes those comments wants to sit 15 feet away from the staff members who in another venue he's just attacked with language that is libelous and defamatory, I think that person will have surrendered, or ought to have surrendered, the right to participate in the public input process. It creates a dynamic of intimidation. When somebody has to be treated with honor and respect after having said those things to city staff, it is wrong and it needs to be stopped. Unfortunately, that's not the case. We live in a world where people use other devices outside these chambers. They create the context in which presentations go on here. For instance, just the other week, just on Friday, in fact it was, somebody on social media, and it pains me to have to quote this, called Councillor Buchanan's attention in particular to a fake Twitter site whose author writes, "I got's hose" in different area codes, which is using the most disrespectful and derogatory language about women, which is intolerable. And I think whether it's done in these chambers or outside these chambers, to allow that person in to speak as if nothing had happened creates a context of intimidation for staff and council that is intolerable, and for other members of the public.
I heard my name mentioned during part of tonight's hearing, and I had a number of people approach me afterwards suggesting that I was the author of cartoons or comics. Was the intent of the reference to imply that I somehow author, pay for, design, or am involved in any way with that?
I heard it. I listened very carefully. The speaker, I think, apologized, said made a mistake, and did not mean to say your name. So I don't know.
I didn't hear an apology.
I'm just telling. No, he didn't apologize. He corrected. He corrected by not mentioning your name. I don't think he meant to do that. It must have been a slip, but it was not directed at you. But certainly those rules will apply, and that's where it's going to be. But this is about what happened with an issue. That issue is going to come back to council in 2 weeks' time, I think, if Ms. Graham can do that. And the council will deal with it again as final adoption. So that's what happened to the issue.
There was another reference made to a website.
I'm not going to answer any more questions about a member of council speaking, Mr. Morris. That's all I'm going to answer with that.
Thank you.